I'm glad that you were down to do this also.
Oh, my pleasure.
hmm
I always like talking, and the chance to hang out with you is beneficial.
I know. I'm sad that we're not in the same city, but it was fun
Yeah,
seeing you in person,
likewise.
at least for a minute.
True.
So let's actually start.
Okay,
Why not?
let's do it.
Um, okay, so I'm Sarah, and you are Robert.
I am Robert.
And I saw your presentation at the Relational Leadership Summit this year, talking about community and movements and companies and what the differences are between them and where they can go right or wrong. And I was really fascinated by what you said, and I wanted to interview you to hear more because I have a big community and company around authentic relating in
hmm
Austin and worldwide, which I imagine has some of the same, you know, faults and successes.
hmm
And I thought this could be a really interesting call to learn from each other and for
Great.
me to learn from you, especially.
Likewise. Well, do you know the funny part was that one day started in Soma, San Francisco, south of Market, it's called, on Folsom Street in 2004. And then Decker and Brian, I know is kind of your creator, opened up a shop maybe a third of a block away. There was, our place, and there was a street, and then there was their loft. And so they, Decker and I have been friends for a really long time, and we'd meet every once in a while, have coffee, like, we're, gangsters at Brainwash, which was this Brainwash, which was this mix of laundromat and cafe right next to their place, and we would just sit and talk and rap and share stories. So there's a long history of me talking to the authentic community about how to build and sharing experiences.
That's fun. I didn't know that history. I knew you
Yeah,
guys started it around the same time and
yeah,
out of the same community in San Francisco,
right.
but I didn't realize it'd been so close.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
So I'd love it if you could like maybe give a brief history first
Mm,
of like One Taste and where it came from, and uh, then I'll kind of just get curious if that works for you.
sure. Wow, it's a kind of a long story. The start of One Taste started officially started in 2004, in July of 2004. That's when we had our opening party. But the history of that goes way back and is intermixed with lots of different communities. I consider myself a pretty normal person until I was 28. I was living in San Francisco, married, had a 5-bedroom house. Um, just was working on the corporate ladder, just living life towards the script of what was supposed to happen. And then my wife at the time, my ex-wife, said, "Hey, do you want to take a class on sex?" And the answer, when you're not having a lot of sex with your wife, when she asks you, is yes, I'd like to take a class on sex. And so that started me going down the rabbit hole. And I met a guy named Irwan Devan, who was actually at the core of this other community called the Gratitude Community, which was really kind of a dance, putting on raves community, but it was pretty tight knit. And then part of that, there were all these different leaders part of it. So Arte, which was started by Jerry and Guy, Decker and Brian came by. We were there. There was a group of women called Spiral Muse out of San Francisco about that time. And so we're all kind of in this time of the late 1990s in San Francisco, all with this idea that we wanted to change the world. It was just like we knew that we had something, and going the straight and narrow really wasn't the place to go. We weren't satisfied with that. So I got really involved in this one group called the Welcome Consensus, which was an offshoot of another organization called Moore University, which had been around since the 60s. And the Welcome Consensus was a younger, tighter, slightly meaner version of Moore University. And so I started studying with them, and we would have groups at our house. And this is 1999. And that's where I first met Nicole Daedone in December of 1999 at one of the groups. And Nicole was just something different and special. She walked in and the room changed. She was tall and had long red hair, a green cowboy hat, denim jeans, these fiery red cowboy boots. She had a rock and roll boyfriend in tow. And I just knew that someone interesting had run into my life. And we became fast friends and took classes with the Welcome Consensus together. And then around 2003, which we broke away from the Welcome Consensus, and then about 2003, she started talking about starting our own community. And then in March 2014, I came home and says, it's time to start the center. And the center was a place for us to have where we could teach our coursework and have a juice bar and have a store. And so we opened up our first place we got the place in March, and then we opened in July of 2014, and then One Taste was born.
This is 2014 or 2004?
Sorry, 2004. Excuse me, 2004.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you actually make that happen? Like, this is my own curiosity. Like, in my world, starting a center is actually kind of hard.
Oh, it was crazy. Absolutely crazy. Well, the first thing is that I had a house in San Francisco, and I sold the house and took the proceeds from the house. It increased in value like 60% over like 3 or 4 years. Took the proceeds of the house and put everything I had into opening the center. And we found this perfect 4,000 square foot beauty of a place, concrete on the bottom, hardwood floors on the top for our yoga studio, wood beams, right in the center of Soma. As Soma just started to wake up, there was definitely life before us, but, this one corner that we're on just started to wake up. And we had a core group of 12 people, myself, Nicole, and 10 other people, who just said, yes, I want to do this. And we dedicated entire, 3 or 4 months of our lives working, 18 to 20 hours a day to build the center, to make our opening date of July 31st, 2004. So it was money, time, and community. And we never would have been able to do it without those 10 core people and the 30 or 40 other people we had met and collected along the way to help us start.
That's an awesome story.
Yeah, it's an awesome story.
And I'm curious, what do you think made that community so tight and invested? What led to that being a community that could create something so big?
Well, like I said, there was a special time in San Francisco. There was a special time in San Francisco where things were just starting, and there was just this desire to create community. I've never been anywhere like San Francisco. I mean, Boulder has a flavor of it, and Austin definitely has a flavor of it, but San Francisco was packed, and there were all these schools and all these teachers and all these creatives. And so we just opened the doors and said, hey, we've got something, and people, really interested in what we were doing. We'd also spent years, building friendships and connections with all, the different groups we're saying. So I think it was just the right timing, and we had done our homework and really connected to a bunch of people. But here's the funny thing. So we had our opening party on July 31st, 2004, and 500, 600 people came. It was a total success, like nonstop. The press covered us, and there was all these people, and I was like, oh man, we did it. We made it. All that time and money, we had made it. Then the next day on Sunday, we had we call it Spiritual Sunday, I think it was called. And we had a yoga class, and there was like 30 or 40 people. And I'm like, we made it. And then Monday hit, and less people started coming around, and less people coming around. So that first year was actually quite challenging, because while it was great to start and have the excitement of the start, the continuance of it, the continuing of the energy took an incredible amount of energy. I would describe sat in center all day today. 2 people came in. 1 person was lost. The other person was the postman. Tumbleweeds. It was just like this pretty empty sensation for a long time. But we just kept at it. We just didn't quit and kept getting creative about how to create this business.
So over time, I'm curious how you see this intersection between business, community, and what I'd call revolution. I forget the word that you used for it.
I called it a movement.
Movement, yeah. And how that played out in One Taste.
It was why One Taste still exists and it's still created, the combination of the 3. And it is an incredibly challenging part of all of it. Because as I did in my presentation, the motivations of the 3 are very different. The motivation of a business is profit. The motivation of community is connection. The motivation of movement is change. So each has its own master, and each has its own desire. And we had a very challenging time finding the right combination between the three. And I still think, still trying to invent and find that right combination that works so well, because it's been, really challenging for a long time. So the community is what saved One Taste, because we had a rash of volunteers and people we want to help you, and I want to hang around with you, and how do we help? And, can I do a front desk shift at the center, or can I help with production? Thousands and thousands of people who just wanted to be around the energy is what helped One Taste be successful. And at the same time, we were a movement. We really wanted to change the world, and we hooked up with the slow movement in the late 2009, 2010. There's this thing called the slow movement, and Nicole coined the term slow sex. That was the name of her book that came out in 2011. So we wanted to be the slow sex movement. We wanted to change the way people related to their sexuality and to their relationship, of slowing down and really feeling, moving at the speed of sensation is something she said. And so the three. So the challenges really were, you have three different motivations, you have three different masters. It's difficult at times to really know where to put your attention. And a lot of people got upset because they would say, are you my friend, or are you trying to sell me something? And this is not out of a malicious intent. We weren't trying to, fool anyone. It was just the fact that, we had three different masters, and a lot of times our communications weren't pristine, and people's feelings got hurt. And so we did our best to really ensure that everyone felt acknowledged and comfortable, but it was an uphill battle.
It's really interesting to hear about, actually, because in Austin, we have a lot of crossover between the authentic relating and the One Taste community. And one of the kind of complaints people will have about One Taste is I always feel like I'm being sold something, and it feels like it's not quite clean. And then they come to our community and they're like, oh, this feels nice and I feel included. And yet our business in authentic relating, I think, has a really hard time, because if we put more focus on community, then we don't sell people. And if people are assets, there's a way that we have a lot of social capital, not a lot of actual capital. So I'm recognizing this issue in building inspiring community that connects with business that needs to have an engine to keep itself running.
Right. Well, I think people inherently have a lot of shame around money. And inherently people selling have a lot of shame about selling. And so what happens is that stunted shame gets communicated in the sales pitch. That shame gets felt by the person, so scared about, spending money on something that's really valuable. Like, I know the One Taste technology is really valuable. It changed my life. It changed thousands of people's lives. And at the same time, people are like, is it worth it? Is it worth the value? Which, of course, is a personal conversation. So what I really recommended always is work on your internal self and your relationship with money and your relationship with selling and your relationship with shame, and then be clean. And then if you're really clean internally, then your sales pitch and your sales process will be a lot smoother. And the second thing I always said is really just be overt. Okay, we're now switching to sales hat. We're now going to put to salespeople, this is the next 10 or 15 minutes. We have to keep this business going. Doesn't have to be that overt, but there's a way we try to sneak in sales, or we're shameful of sales. And to find that balance is the mastery. And I'm not saying it's easy, but I think just being more overt really saved us in a lot of places that, we just said, okay, we're now going to make a sales pitch, or we'll make a sales pitch at the end of this presentation, or we're going to come to this party and at the end we're going to offer a special offer. And if you want it, here it is. If you don't, you don't. But finding that skill took a long time.
Yeah, I could see that. And I could imagine in having something that's an overlapping of different needs and desires,
Yep.
Community, movement, business, that you have to find a way of keeping clean and also being clear when you're wearing each hat.
Right. And really, it's a really tough mixture, but you have to sell. It's like the community, if you don't sell, then the community goes away. It's like we were the glue for hundreds, if not thousands of people in each region having a place to go. We had the groups, we had the home circles, we had the center. That took time and money. People needed to be paid. People needed to pay their rent. And so for the community to get mad at the business for being a business is ridiculous. And the business to be mad at the community, if they just want a community, is ridiculous. And so it's just finding that marriage between the two, which I think just comes from overt, clean communication, is the only way to do it.
Did you find good ways of communicating that?
Yes, after learning the bad ways to communicate that. You know, we just struggled with it, and it was struggling by the time I left. It's not like it's a simple thing. It took a lot of time and energy, a lot of feedback. The thing that I think One Taste could have done better is taken feedback better. I think a lot of people in the beginning were saying, "Hey, this feels off," and there's part of us are working so hard, and we didn't quite take the feedback. So that's one thing I learned a lot in my business now is like, take feedback. Okay, I could have done this better. I miscued here. Admit when you make a miscue. Admit when you're not quite on the spot. And then what happens? People trust you more. So taking feedback, I think, is the most important thing. One Taste created something called the Reconciliation Council, which was 3 people who are dedicated to reconciling issues between business members and community members. And we paid this awesome guy, Ulysses, to do that for a long time, and he really smoothed out a lot of things. So have a way for people to express their feelings, and if you don't, then what happens is they go to another community and make complaints. So definitely welcome all feedback, because you're going to learn from the feedback.
That's actually a really cool way of doing it, like to have a specific counsel or a person that's in charge of reconciling disputes.
Yes. Yeah. So important. So important. And, it didn't always work, but at least we learned that we have to. And so I think, having one place where people feel safe enough to tell the truth, because they don't want to lose your friendship. They don't want to lose the community. But if there's some part of them that's really bugged out about a particular sales process, then that's what they're going to remember. That's what they're going to take. And so just give people the opportunity to communicate what's going on with them. It's really important.
Yeah. So I've got another question, which is, in my world, it's very hard for communities or businesses or movements to start without an inspiring leader.
Totally.
Or leaders. And I'm curious about, and something I've also found is like over time, the role of leader shifts, or who is in leadership. I'm just curious what the evolution of that has been for One Taste. Like, what role did leaders play?
Well, Nicole has always been the face and the figurehead. She's always been the muse, the inspiration. And I mean, Nicole is absolutely brilliant. There's no other way to put it. She is just one of the most brilliant people, if not the most brilliant person I've ever met in my entire life. And she also inspired because she was so dedicated to the movement. And
what do you mean? Just to cut in a little, what do you mean when you say that she was brilliant, or she is brilliant?
I mean, there's her creativity and her way to see people, and the concept of, she was like the best student I found. She would gather from all these different modalities, from yoga or sitting meditation, from Kabbalah or Buddhism, from science, from doing, which was the Mora University practice. She gathered all the best parts of it, made a soup, brought the soup to the community. The community tasted it, said, it's a little sweet, or that's a little salty. And then she'd go back and modify it. And from that, the whole One Taste technology, a new way of living got created, which totally altered my life, in my opinion, for the better. Like, I really like myself now and have such vast skills in relating to women and seeing things. And so she's really amazing at pulling different viewpoints and building it into a practice for success. So she's always been the figurehead. And in the figurehead role, there's all the positive aspects of making change and affecting people, and all people's shadows and projections that fell on her. And then there's her own humanity, which is, she's a human being with human faults and human feelings. And so, Nicole's been in a very challenging position for 12 years now, and she's done a really phenomenal job of continuing going to expand the community and continue to evolve the practice. I don't know where One Taste is now. I've been out for over 2 years, but I do see it continues to evolve to bring the concept of deliberate touch and deliberate orgasm into the world conversation, which was always our goal.
Must feel really good for you.
Yeah. And the thing about a leader is it's the best job and it's the absolute worst job. I mean, you carry so much weight on your shoulders. I was always her right-hand man. I was always the man behind the curtain. I was the one figuring out how to make all the lights work and pay the bills and make sure the people are paid and the legal and the ability to make sure that all the pieces were tied together, which was its own set of incredible challenge. When you have a dynamic leader, it's like I used to describe it like it was like you were waltzing, and then the music changed, and then you were tap dancing, and then you were break dancing, and that's how One Taste was for years. Was just constant movement.
Mm-hmm. I have like lots more curiosity, but I see that we have a question, and I actually want to open it up a little here for the people listening. Like, if you guys have any questions, we'll take them for a little while, so feel free to type them in the chat box. And Brenda has a question of, why did you leave? Do you still own, and what do you do now?
Great.
It'd be fun for you to make a pitch.
I left in 2014. I had a flash in 2013 that this is not the way I wanted to spend the rest of my life. It was an incredible, 12-year experience at that point when I did leave. But I didn't want to run a community. I didn't want to live with people. I didn't want the stress of nonstop travel. I was basically, on the road constantly. Move to London tomorrow. Okay, I'm packing my bags or on the road. And my health was declining a little bit. I was overweight, and so there was this desire to live a more simple, quieter life. And so I made a good deal with Nicole, and we left really good terms. And I just walked out the door basically in July 2014. I moved to Venice, California, and had my whole life to create. And so I just started a consulting business, and that's what I do. I do basically 4 things. The first is I'm a business consultant. I help small businesses, usually women-run businesses, on how to expand. My specialty is small up-and-coming businesses around legal and operational and financial. I help people who want to run courses. I have vast experiences after 12 years of One Taste helping small businesses. Then I'm a life coach. I'm helping people with their personal stuff. I have my podcast, which I'm proud of, Tough Love, toughlove.live. I do a show every Thursday at 10 a.m. PST. You can hear old shows at toughlove.live or via iTunes. And then I'm starting my speaking career. I want to be a professional speaker, and I'm doing talk in New York City. And then I just did a professional group of CEOs in Northern California. So that's my next focus of those 4 things. And yes, I do own, but not as much as I used to. Probably a lot less than I used to. I own with my partner, my fiance, and other people as it comes up.
Rock on. I like what a life that you've created for yourself in just 2 years.
It's been incredible. And I made a huge mistake. I want to, get that on the record. I left One Taste, and I was working by myself with an associate for about 7 months. And I was bored to death. And so then what happened is I started another business, which on some level was akin to One Taste. It wasn't sexuality-based, but it was a community-based and a women-run business. And I found myself putting myself right back in the position that started March 2015 that just closed this month. And so I spent 20 months and a lot of money and a lot of experience learning that I had replicated something I was leaving. There was some part of me that still wanted that experience. And so it's been a very expensive, energetically exhausting experience to know, oh, I need to do things for myself. And so no one's perfect. I'm not perfect. And it's been a really interesting experience to admit that to myself. I was like, oh, that was a miscue starting that second business. So life lesson.
Yeah. We got a couple more questions, and one actually kind of feeds into this.
Okay.
Which is, why should people want to create and build community? And if they do so, what's the first place to begin?
Okay, great.
This is fun because I talk about this too.
Yeah. Why would you want to build community? It's because the solo lifestyle, living what is called 2 in a box, doesn't attract you. It's not gratifying enough. And so if you build community because you know there's something you want more. My fiance really wants to build a community of families to live together. I co-parent 2 children, a 6-year-old and 8-year-old, her kids. And she really wants to live in a place where all the kids can play with each other and adults can support each other. And so she wants to build that community. I've seen communities built around 12-step. I've seen communities built around other leaders. But people really want community so they can share their experience and share their life in whatever degree of intensity so they don't feel isolated. We live in a world of extreme isolation, and the advent of the smartphone and the advent of social media has really had a huge cost on people's well-being and psyche. And so the ability to live in community and be connected to community is really healthy. More people die because the people who die, who live alone, tend to die faster than people with connection. The first step for starting a community really is very simple. You need to create a group goal. This is something a lot of communities don't do. You need to create a concept, an idea, part of a movement around anything. It could be around anything. It could be around a cooking club. I don't know. But you have to build something that the community can rally around. If you don't have something, a group goal, then you're just a bunch of friends, which isn't bad. But if you really want to build a community and you want to build strong binds, create a group goal that's bigger than any individual can do by themselves. Then everyone has something to participate to find that.
Nice. I also find something around how people, like there being a defined way that people communicate with each other, or a regular meeting or something that brings people together on a regular basis, like in cooperative communities, having weekly dinners was the way that we built community, or in the community I have now, having a regular event.
Right. It can be really simple. And, the thing about community is it ebbs and flows. That's the most important thing. It just grows and expands and then decreases. And if you take it personally on the expansion, then you're going to take it personally when it contracts. It's just the way things are. If you want to hold a community and create a community, then it's your job just to hold strong, to know that you're going on the ride and the rise and fall of the building of your community. And sometimes it takes years to build.
And we got one other question, which is, what do you do if your community is struggling or if you aren't attracting new people?
Well, there's a couple things. One is you could look at the intentions of your community and really go back to that group goal and look at the intentions. And if your intentions are not clean and clear, well codified, well written out, then people won't hang around. So what I often say and mentor people who want to build community is, are you sure you're communicating to the community what the group goal is? Or do you need to modify that group goal? Is that group goal not creating value for someone? Are you doing it for your financial gain? Are you doing it for your own self-serving reasons? That's where communities often collapse or don't attract people, because people can feel those little minutia things. And they're like, this doesn't feel right. And then they split. So if you're having trouble attracting new people, go back to yourself, go back to the drawing board and say, I want to look at this. Because if you don't have clean group goals, you're not going to create a community.
There's something for me too there, and I want to hear your thoughts on this,
okay.
Around inspiring people and forming connections.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can do all the social media and marketing in the world, but if you don't catch the influencers, it actually doesn't matter that much. So finding people that have connections to other people and inspiring them towards what you care about, and even having them help with what you're creating, sounds like what you guys did with One Taste as well.
Yeah, I used to call them Pied Pipers. Because Pied Pipers would bring a bunch of people. So yeah, looking out for other community members, collaborating is really huge. I mean, Decker and I would collaborate. We'd have share parties. We actually even shared a space in San Francisco for a period of time, looking for other leaders, being gracious to other leaders, inviting people. Don't feel protective of your stuff. It's actually in community that creation happens, and then more connections. So yeah, definitely find those Pied Pipers and invite them in and share the wealth.
So I have a curiosity then, is like, how do you tie those growing relationships into having a company?
Well, that is the challenge. I mean, it's a challenge and the easiest part. Like, I know the authentic relating has some really core viewpoints and practices that help people in their lives and help their communication. So that becomes your core message. That becomes your core relating. I watched you guys at the Boulder speaking your own language and talking. I was so entranced by it. I'm not really looking forward not looking to join a community, but if I did, I love the straight talkingness of that seminar and just how you guys interacted with each other. So if you want to build a business out of your community, then you need to add value to people's lives and say, okay, you're attracted to the way we talk to each other. Then this is the way you learn how to do it. This is how you get better at it. This is how you bring it into your lives. So you have to add value to what they're attracted to. And, the attractiveness is the deep connection between the members. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like people look in a window. And I think most people are dying for community, dying for connection. And so they're looking in the window and being like, wow, those people look like they're having so much fun and so intimate. I want that. And you're like, okay, here's a course you can take to learn that, which is a really powerful offering.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I want to state again, I don't think I clearly communicated the question that I had,
okay.
Which is if you start bringing people in as influencers, as Pied Pipers, and they kind of start having a stake in your community.
Okay.
And I'm asking this actually because I hear this question from a couple of the community leaders in the authentic relating world who I mentor. How do you then have a business, but also have these people that are kind of on the community end that are helping out? Like a question I get is like, oh, if I'm bringing in new facilitators to help me, then they're going to want a stake in the proceeds of what I'm bringing in. I'm only getting enough for me right now. And how do you engage that kind of blurry boundary between people that are bringing others in?
Yeah, it's challenging. I mean, it is super challenging to find that balance. And, what we would do at One Taste is we created affiliate fees. People said, okay, if you brought someone to the course, we'll pay you X% of their gross revenue over a set period of time. So that was one way to share the wealth. If those people wanted to teach with us and we thought it was beneficial, we would give them a share, we give them a stipend for teaching with us. But I understand the underlying question. If the business is not flourishing and making a lot of money, but you need those people, how do you compensate them? That's really the balance. And one thing you can do is just really be honest with those influencers. This is the status of our cash flow. This is the status of our business. I want you to feel rewarded. And this is all we can afford at this time. If we get to X amount of dollars somewhere down the line, I'm glad to give you a bonus. But to be transparent with your money, to be transparent with your business is a really powerful tool, because then people don't feel ripped off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really liking this kind of theme that seems to be weaving through of just tell people up front what's true.
True.
And, be human to them.
Yeah.
Seems like the core of any movement.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in groups, and One Taste had a bit of an in-out game for a while. In-out game is just like when you're in, you're pulled in really hard, and when you're out, you're pushed out really hard. There's a boundary you needed to cross, and some of our teachers were really strong in the in-out game, and you actually feared being out. And so One Taste, I tried to work a lot about this concept of permeability, people to come in and come out without any issues. And sometimes it works and sometimes it didn't. But really just making it very easy for people to come in and very easy for people to come out. And so the feeling is just sort of how do you find that really strong balance?
Mm-hmm. I'm liking these comments from Danielle. Do you want to respond to them, or do you want another?
Let me see. I got pushed out of the One Taste when I couldn't afford the coaching program. I love this response. Yeah, that happens. Yeah. And I'm not saying One Taste is perfect now. I don't know if One Taste will ever be perfect. But, always to endeavor to do this with more transparency, always to endeavor to be more honest, and always be more clear, because that's how people feel taken care of. People are much more likely to complain about an organization than they are to speak well of it. People are very quick to go to Yelp. I was at a U-Haul dealer, and the guy was half an hour late, and I still didn't show up. I had to leave, and my first thought was I'm going on Yelp. I'm going to blast this guy. Yesterday when he gave me perfect customer service, I never thought I was going to give him positive kudos. So your reputation of the community is based on how well people are taken care of. And so that's a challenge, especially for an organization as big as One Taste, was make sure to have people feel well taken care of. As your community grows, you're going to lose that one-to-one touch. Like, I used to meet people like, hi, Robert, how's it going? I'm like, I have no idea who you are. And they're like, that thing you said changed my life. And I'm like, I have absolutely no memory of ever saying that, but I'm so glad you said that. To be transparent and real. That is the lesson I learned, because every time you try to hide something from a client or try to look cool, that's where they really get pissed off.
Yeah. And this, it kind of touches on an idea of community boundaries, that like when you're talking about the community having a goal, it's like we have a goal or a demographic or something, and it means there's somebody that isn't part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually seems like an essential function for a community, to have boundaries the same way an organism does. And it seems like what you're talking about is, imagine actually one of the reasons One Taste was even so successful, or is so successful, is that there are strong boundaries. Like there's a reason to want to be in, because if you're in, then you get like the sense of community and the feeling of togetherness. But if you're out, you're out. And I'm curious if you have any other thoughts on that idea of community boundaries.
It's a really hard, yes, many thoughts. And it's a very hard aspect of it. I always want to be like, One Taste is for everyone. Open our doors, young, old, black, white, green, yellow, bisexual, metrosexual, like everything. I wanted to be a one-stop shop for everyone. I mean, I was so in love with the practice and the effect on me. I just wanted to be totally possible for people. And in reality, it's not. It's actually not right for a lot of people. And sometimes my arrogance, I would not see that the One Taste wasn't right. And I would have my agenda say, oh, this is a right thing for you. You should take this course. And in the end, it wasn't really right. That was a lesson I had to learn very quickly, was to pay more attention to the student than my own agenda. So then when it came down to boundaries and keeping things really clear, the thing about a community boundary is ever changing and ever expanding. And sometimes you don't know that a place isn't right for you until you've spent some time there. Or sometimes people, had some mental challenges or trauma issues or personality or family things that didn't have us fit right. And so we had to learn really quickly to identify these things and just say like, hey, this might not be the best place for you. Or sometimes here's your money back. This was a misenrollment. Nothing about you per se. It's just you're not a right fit. So again, back down to that transparency and back to that realistic, honest conversation. Like, I miscued. My agenda got in the way. I apologize. Here's your money back. Good luck. And sometimes people get really pissed off at that. And a lot of people have abandonment issues, and you're dealing with that. But really, to the sanctity of the community was really important, and ensuring that people were safe and well taken care of was the mission.
Yeah. It actually ties into a question I've been holding on to for a little while, which is this kind of idea of problem members in community, which could be like people that take up a lot of time and space and resources and maybe aren't quite a fit for the community, but are often quite vocal parts of it.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how you guys navigated that.
Sometimes really well and sometimes not so well. It's just like every relationship. Some aspects were awesome. There was one guy in Texas who had some mental challenges that my enroller didn't see. And so I went down to teach a men's course there, and I treated him like every other guy. And, he had some serious mental issues that I picked on a little bit during the course, but then I didn't, I said, we should not do this exercise tonight. And he felt he so wanted to do the exercise that he came, even though I said, I don't think this is the best exercise for him. And then he got really triggered in the exercise. And then we had to deal with his fallout, which had, again, a lot of mental imbalance in that. And so we learned really quickly, it's just like when you have that first thought to say this person doesn't fit, is to identify it and move towards it and don't ignore it and confront it. That was a really important piece. And if a community member is taking outside the range of what you think appropriate, as a leader, it's your job to say, these are my boundaries, and I can't give you this much more time. I have other responsibilities. People, we're good community members and community leaders. We want to do so good. We want to help people. And so we have to, then we often do that at our own expense. And to find that right spot and to be honest around it is a skill like any other. And like I said, I've made hundreds of miscues in my career, but I learned from each one and got better and was more transparent. There was one time we did a demonstration of orgasmic meditation in front of a transgender man. And his girlfriend was cis female, but also very traumatized as a child. And she got totally traumatized by the oming, a male stroking a woman in front of an audience, and got totally triggered by that. And she did this whole speech about how awful it felt and how much trauma she had. And I could just basically say at the end, I was like, I'm sorry, I've never had that experience before. I can empathize with your pain, but I can't even comment, because I have no idea what your world is like. Can I do anything for you? And instead of trying to be cool and a know-it-all, I just basically said, this is outside my realm. And then the most amazing thing happened is she just felt acknowledged, being heard, and there was nothing more I needed to say. Because no one else in her life had ever really listened to her pain. And I felt totally grateful that she expressed it and I was able to receive it.
That's inspiring.
Yeah. We're pushing boundaries. We're in the boundary pushing business, and you're going to push buttons. Have your staff and have your practice to handle them.
Yeah. It seems like a couple things there. One is that this sort of conflict or pushback is inevitable, and it's something that you can learn from, which is what you said earlier, to take the feedback from any given thing, to really acknowledge it with humility, and to be honest and not to take it personally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the hardest thing. And, I would get triggered, in teaching, and, people would give me pushback, and I'm like, I'm working so hard here. Why don't you like me? But I'm just like, all right, this is my job. My job is to listen and to acknowledge and take in what they're saying.
Yeah. I feel major empathy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious if there's more that's coming up for you or that you want to say, because I've been directing the conversation.
The most important thing was it was a life changer for me. I had bought my father's mandate of how I was supposed to live in this life. I was supposed to do well in high school, do better in college, go to grad school, get that job, build my career, produce grandchildren, produce grandchildren, retire at 50 and then start to live your life. And, this whole experience in all these communities just showed me that there was an alternative way for me to live. And I broke with my parents, really my dad, for a good 10 years, pursuing my own life and my own purpose and my own choice, which was very challenging for a firstborn Jewish son to break from his father. All this belief system were so entwined in my system. But in community has been such an incredible practice. And the way I've learned is in connection with other people. You can read as many books as you want. You can go to as many courses as you want. But the real change for me and what I've seen other people is when you take those concepts and rub up against other people. Because inside of that, that's where the growth is. So if you're thinking about joining a community, try it. Go to a meetup group. Get off your ass. Stop thinking about it. Stop procrastinating. Actually go and engage, because in that, that's where the growth is. And so I highly recommend. Communities are absolutely beautiful and challenging. We used to say it was the highest highs and the lowest lows, but at the same time, there's so much power. So I highly recommend be around other people. Do not have a relationship with your phone only. Go forth and be connected to other human beings.
Yeah, if you're going to create community, do it in community.
Yeah, exactly.
I loved that. Thank you. I could feel your passion for it as you continued speaking.
Yeah.
And I have one other question, which is I know that creating something big like this can be like a lot of work and a lot of stress. It's basically like entrepreneurship. It's founding a company.
Mhm.
And I'm curious how you guys managed to keep it fun and keep it inspiring. Like, how did you get through the hard times together?
Um, there were many, many hard times. Sometimes there were graceful hard times. Other times they were very challenging. But here's an uplifting story. So I remember once we needed $5,000 or $6,000 to pay the rent, and it was like the second or third last day of the month. And so Nicole and we lived in a house together with a bunch of other people, and I bought her coffee in the morning, and she said, "What's up?" I'm like, "We need $5,000. Let's just do that number." And she's like, "Okay, how do we do that?" And I was like, "I have no idea." She's like, "How about we throw a party?" And I'm like, "Okay." And so in this 2-hour conversation over multiple cups of coffee, we decided to have a new party, and then have a course. So we were moving houses on Friday to a new place. We had a party on Saturday, and then we had a course on Sunday. So it was like a 4-day sprint. And so from that one conversation, we engaged the entire community. We got ever inspired. We built a web page. We built an Eventbrite. We got people calling. We got 80 people at that party, each paying like 50 or 60 bucks each. We had 25 people at that new course we built, each paying, 200 bucks or 300 bucks. We doubled the money we needed to make in that one period. And so what happens is when I'm by myself and working, I have the limited scope of my creativity. But when you're working with 2, 3, 5, 6 other people, you have the combined energy. And so the combined energy of all our brilliance and all our skills is what had us make double the money and create a whole new experience. I'll never forget that one moment when Nicole said, "Let's throw a party." And I was like, "Okay, let's do it." And then in that, my yes and her yes and everyone's yes is what saved us from having that rent problem. And so if you're feeling isolated and stuck, do whatever you can to get some other brilliant minds to work with. You can do this online, you can do this in men's group, you can do this in women's group, but doing stuff by yourself is really challenging.
I feel like I'm getting that with you right here.
Anytime.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Robert. I
My
don't even
pleasure.
know if I have other specific questions, but I've really, really enjoyed this.
Cool. Let me see if any other questions in chat. Brenda asked, how far along is she building that community? I think she's talking about my lady Morgan's wanting to build a community. Not very far, to be honest. We are searching out like-minded people, and we have our own kind of vibe. And so I think we're just in that initiating starting point. So I'm glad to talk to you if you want some more chats, but it's really just starting along. And then Danielle wrote, rewarding those who put into your company is important, but recognizing the value they've given per capita, as well as assisting and investing back in the community that feeds and nurtures them so well. Yeah, and we didn't always do that. We didn't always give back what was given to us. And there are some examples of where we didn't handle it as well, but always willing to give back even more, to be gracious and to give people the opportunity to really connect to is really important.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious if you guys have any other questions. If so, feel free to type them in the chat box. Last call.
Last call. How sweet. She's typing as fast as she can.
Anjali asks, do you ever go through compassion fatigue?
Oh my God, totally. Totally. Because I was, teaching nonstop for 2 years. I was basically on the road, 3 or 4 days in one city, jump on a plane and go to another city. And so there were moments where I was just so sick of people. I became like a TV junkie, and I would just go to my room, put my covers over my head, and just like zone out. Exercise was really important to me to keep my sanity, and my own practices. I was involved in 12-step, and that really helped. And so the ability to find your own space is really important. Because if I wasn't feeding myself, then I wasn't authentically feeding my community. To find that balance was extremely important. So take care of yourself.
Yeah, I resonate with that. And Brenda had a great question, which is, after One Tastes started and the numbers declined in the first couple of years, what rallied to get the growth back up?
Being inventive was the most important thing. So one, keeping the faith, being inventive, and asking for help. And so I always said One Taste had like 7 different phases. At first we were a center in San Francisco, a destination spot. You go to Fisherman's Wharf, you come to One Taste, Fisherman's Wharf for the crab, One Taste for the orgasm. Then we became kind of like a school. We had a bunch of teachers working for us. We produced magazines like the Learning Center. Like it became like an adult learning center, which was really fun. We became a school of magic. I mean, all these different phases. And so keep evolving, keep inventing, don't give up, and keep tweaking your system. Don't get stuck in, okay, we set up this business plan and now this has to be the way we do it. Keep evolving and changing is really the most important thing. And, we started off with orgasm as our concept, and then we switched to female orgasm, and then more women came. And then we switched back to orgasm when we had the numbers. So again, it's in messaging, it's in concepts, and it's the ability to connect with other leaders, like Sarah said.
Cool.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much for taking this time.
My pleasure, Dom.
Yeah, this was awesome. I feel like I got a lot of insight on my own community and how to communicate this to others. And it's just really cool hearing your process.
My pleasure.
Mm-hmm. Any last things you want to say?
If you want to find me, go to toughlove.live, TUFF love.live. And then on there is my main website. You scroll to the bottom, my email, my phone number is at the footer, where you can send me a contact form. But I'm glad to chat with anyone who'd like to chat around this concept or business coaching or life coaching, or please just listen to my podcast because I love them.
Nice. And guys, I might be doing more videos like this, not sure yet, but I have a lot of community building stuff up at authrev.com, AUTHREV.com. So thanks for being on here. We'll have the recording up, probably posted on Facebook and on Authentic Revolution, and I imagine maybe on Robert's as well. And hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Thank you, sweetheart.
All right. Thanks, you too.
Okay, talk to you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.